Hello everyone, welcome to the James A channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Joy to the World, the latest Doctor Who installment and the Christmas special with Ncuti Gatwa and Nicola Coughlan. So we start off in World War II. Now the first few minutes of this episode were actually put on social media a couple of months ago, and when I first watched them I saw, oh, Christmas special in World War II, that sounds amazing, right? But no, pretty quickly, once the Doctor arrives offering a ham and cheese toast and a pumpkin latte, we then realise it's actually a bit of a globe-trotting adventure, because we then go to the Orient Express, and yet when the Doctor's on the Orient Express, we see behind him, it's clearly not the carriage behind him, it looks like a big room behind him, so that's nice. It kind of gives you an early hint of what's going on. That, you know, maybe he's going through like a gateway to the Orient Express. We then go to Mount Everest. Just cutting into here to say, when the Doctor arrives at Mount Everest, we can see that the year is 1953, which is quite significant because I believe that was a British expedition that was there, and I know Edmund Hillary, a New Zealander, was involved in that expedition, so that's a cool interaction there. I say that some of the acting is questionable. The look of shock on their faces as the Doctor offers them the food in their tent, they look. The expressions are terrible. It don't look believable at all. The look of shock, but that's alright because we then see Nicola Coughlan as Joy. Don't know what her last name is, and she's arriving at a hotel. Now it's interesting because the opening shot actually reminds me of The End of Time, the way it's panning down and there's the Christmas lights. I'll put a picture now, but it's kind of like the final shots we see of the Power Estate in The End of Time. And her interactions with Anita at the start are actually quite funny. You know, we see a bit of her comedic charm. And as she's taken to her hotel room, she starts talking to a fly, because who doesn't talk to a fly? And then that's when the Silurian appears, and suddenly things are becoming very interesting because all kinds of things are going on. The Doctor halfway across the world in one scene, then suddenly we've got her in London with a Silurian in a hotel room, and then the Doctor appears. He offers the ham and cheese toasty and a pumpkin latte, and then we go into the titles. And I quite like the smile he has just before we go into the titles, very doctory. Now, personally, the whole ham and cheese toast, the pumpkin latte thing, I think that's a bit silly. We've gone through the titles, and then we arrive at the Time Hotel, and we can see the shot, establishing shot. It actually looks like a futuristic London, which is quite cool. I like that. And as we see the hotel, as we going through it, the shot, you can actually hear, I think it's called The Stowaway, which is music from one of the David Tennant Christmas specials. It might be Voyage of the Damned. That would probably make the most sense, but that's a nice little throwback. And again, it kind of adds to the Christmas spirit that we're just having fun here. And the first few minutes of the Doctor are actually really good because he's walking around trying to get coffee, whatever. But all these interactions he's having are very doctory. And when he meets with the clerk at the hotel, I can't remember his name, but the sort of way that he's talking to him, hey, you see the guy with the suitcase, let's walk around, let's have a talk. That's all, it kind of reminds me of like the Fourth Doctor. I love that interaction, it's really cool. We then have the scene of the Doctor ordering the food off the menu, and this is where we get a really cool idea, a very Moffat idea, in fact, where he orders the food and then straight away it's brought to him, and he's told, you know, they make the food half an hour in the future, and then there's the joke about, oh, well, it's still microwaved, and you can't get your hopes up, whatever. That's all really cool. So early on we're getting lots of nice little character moments, cool ideas, and that's what the story does well. Not going too far ahead, but I think the best bits of the story are some of those interactions with the characters. You know, the script is really good in some of these moments between characters, and the ideas are very good, and we know Moffat's good with the ideas, but occasionally the execution can be a bit of a problem. Now, anyway, before we go too far forward, there's the stuff with the briefcase. So the Doctor runs off, going to do whatever with the food, and we then go to, I think it's a bar, and the bartender asks the guard the suitcase, whatever questions, and then suddenly it gets attached to him with like a handcuff or whatever, and the guy who used to have the briefcase is told, oh, he's about to die because the bartender's been possessed. But yeah, that idea of someone being told, yeah, you've got like 2 minutes to live, that's a very Moffat idea. I really like that. I think it happens trying to pinpoint stories where I know that's happened, but I mean, if you think of The Empty Child, when the Doctor and Dr. Constantine, he sees the scar on his hand, and he knows that Dr. Constantine's about to turn into one of the zombies or whatever they are. And then you've got in Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, the Doctor, when he sees the shadows, counting the shadows, he sees all these people are about to get, killed by the Vashta Nerada. I think also Mummy on the Orient Express, when the people are told you've got like 66 seconds to live and then you're going to get killed. So that's a very Moffat thing, people knowing that they don't have much time left, and that's really cool. We don't explore that too much here, but it's utilised enough that when you see these people die, it's actually quite creepy, and it adds some stakes to the situation, because we then go back to the Doctor meeting Joy and being with the Silurian, you then realise when that Silurian's dying, that's only going to have a Silurian here for about 5-10 minutes in the story, which almost makes you think, what was the point? Now, I think this is quite an interesting talking point, that scene, because we have the Doctor interacting with the Silurian, and this is when he first encounters Joy. Now, she doesn't shut up. He's trying to figure out what the hell's happening with the Silurian, but she keeps yapping and saying, "Hey, this is my hotel room. You're going to tell me what's going on?" It's just, I'm thinking, come on, shut up. Let's listen to the interesting dialogue here. And pretty quickly, the Silurian is collapsing on a bed. But yeah, here he's just getting emotional kind of for the sake of it. And, I'm kind of thinking, we're not even 10 minutes in already, the Doctor's going to have his crying scene. I don't actually think he cries, but he certainly has tears in his eyes. And I know how much of a fan we all are of that, the Doctor being emotional. We all love the 15th Doctor crying, don't we? Yeah. Otherwise, why else would Russell be doing it in every single story? Now, we then have the Doctor and Joy opening the suitcase, and there's like this big, I don't know, like orb of light. I think it's meant to be the seed. And we're trying to figure out what the seed's for. But we have the Doctor, he closes the case or whatever, and that's when this countdown is activated. Now, this countdown is where the problems start for me in the story, because he's thinking, holy crap, we're about to get blown up or whatever, got 5 seconds left, and then he's suddenly thinking to himself, oh, how on earth could I get out of this? And he almost realises that something a bit special is going to happen, and suddenly a future version of the Doctor flies through the door, quickly tells him the code, but now we're thinking, why the hell have we got 2 Doctors here? Things are getting interesting. That's what we think. And once one Doctor, the present Doctor, has had a bit of a moan at the other one says, goodbye mate, and he takes Joy and they leave through the door, leaving the 15th Doctor to pretty much his own devices, and he has to spend a year in that hotel with Anita, just waiting, I suppose, for the moment to get to the situation that his future self was in. So all the interactions with Anita are nice, but the problem is I just don't see the point in any of it, because unless there's going to be some maybe repercussions down the line, his interactions with Anita really don't add much to the story. It's nice character moments, but we already know he's an emotional Doctor, so it's no surprise he has an emotional relationship with her. They're very good friends. You almost think, could she be a companion? I don't think she will be, but just an idea. So yeah, he spends the year with her, and as he's saying goodbye, we have a problem here, because I think Silent Night's playing as he goes to deliver a present, which I think it's a little miniature TARDIS wrapped up. I can't remember if that's actually revealed or not. But yeah, that's nice, because then the music goes silent when she walks in, and she starts saying goodbye, and it is quite emotional. But then you slowly hear Murray Gold's music seeping in, and that says a lot to me, because the scene is already kind of sad. I mean, we've only known her for 10 minutes. The Doctor might have a strong emotional relationship with these characters, but we as an audience don't, because we don't have enough time to get to know them. So you can't expect us to feel sad in these scenes. And that's why RTD's having to get Murray Gold to kick in the music, try and make this sad. It's too loud for me. It just doesn't work. As nice as the music is, we already know Murray's got very good music. We don't need to hear it here. So yeah, he says goodbye to her. It's not very sad. I'd be surprised if anyone found it particularly sad. And then yeah, he goes back to get Joy away from his present self, and that's when we realise that the whole code thing is a bootstrap paradox. He only knows the code because he got it from himself, which is kind of like an infinite loop of the code coming from nowhere. Now, you can say that's clever. I say it's lazy writing because ultimately, what is the point of the code? He could have shut the briefcase, nothing happened, then they used a Sonic for the 15th time, and then go back through the door and continue with the story. The code and all of that stuff with Anita is pointless for me. I'm sorry. There's gonna be people that like it. There'll be people that say, "Oh, but it's like in the Big Bang. How the 11th Doctor get the sonic screwdriver?" It is cool in that, but here to me, it just seems like lazy writing. It didn't need to be introduced to that plot line, so that is a problem. And I'm sorry, it's just not for me. Now, what I will say, the scene of the Doctor interacting with himself, although it's a bit weird, it is cool because seeing any Doctor interact with himself, whether it's the second Doctor and the third Doctor interacting, or multiple variations of one Doctor interacting, it's always fun. But I just don't necessarily see the point here. That could be a plotline reserved for another story. You don't need it here. But overall, I think with Moffat, we know he's creative, and if you want to make a story timey-wimey, we know he's capable of doing that. But you can't just pull a bootstrap paradox out your ass and expect people to start clapping, saying, "Yeah, that was really good. We want more." That's genius, because if we've seen it before, it's not exactly genius. It's unoriginal, right? The central idea is very different. It's a time hotel made up of all these different timelines. That's great. Stick to that and really make a plot around that. I think it's kind of just a backdrop, perhaps not utilized enough, other than scenes of him going back and forth between places. And this is an interesting point, because if you think about it, we see him go into the past. He goes to the Orient Express, to Mount Everest, World War II. There's then the scene with the dinosaurs later, Bethlehem later. We'll go to that. But considering it's a time hotel, we don't see much of the future, really. There is that one shot right after the titles where you see futuristic London, but we need more to say it's a time hotel, because you can't just have a Silurian and a few other elements. If we went somewhere in the future, that would have been quite nice. And as Joy is fighting with like the possessed state of her mind and the Doctor's trying to snap her out of it, I think we then have a scene in an elevator where he's really pushing her, and this leads to quite an out of place element of the story, which we'll get to. But he's pushing her, he's saying horrible things about her. And now, I don't think anyone would actually buy that he's just saying things for the sake of it. I think it's fairly obvious what's going on, that he's trying to say rude things to snap her out of her possessed state. I'm sure that's happened before in Doctor Who stories, but yeah, it's fun enough. She then talks about her mother, and this is where there's a problem, because any subtlety is completely lost even within about 5 seconds of her talking about her mother's death, because pretty much as soon as she says, "I had to say goodbye by an iPad," I think pretty much anyone over the age of about 10 knows full well what she's referring to. And yeah, the issue of COVID is an interesting one, because it's very clearly a criticism of how the UK government handled COVID. Now, I don't live in the UK, so I only watched on when things were happening. I can't really say anything, but yeah, when we then go to the 65 million years ago, the dinosaur, and she's still going on about it, crying, saying, "Oh, they were partying and I couldn't even say goodbye to my mother." It's just, it just doesn't work for me. I mean, as horrible as COVID was, and I can't really comment because I wasn't affected in such a way that loved ones were lost and I couldn't say goodbye. It just doesn't sit right having this discussed, a couple of years after lockdown and partying and that sort of thing, irresponsibility. That was an issue a while ago, and it kind of feels like, why are we going back to that? It's almost like if there was a story next season dedicated to the Timeless Child, or a plot element from Jodie Whittaker, it would kind of be like, why are we going back to something that we've tried to move on from? So that is a problem. The COVID stuff, it gets a bit worse later. But yeah, not wanting to offend, but I just don't think it's for me, and nothing we can do about it. We then find out that Valengard is involved, and there's gonna be like a big explosion, and it's adding a bit of some stakes to the story. And we then have a an element that I think I've seen in a lot of Doctor Who stories. Again, because it kind of feels like there's a lot of familiar elements in the story. It's unique, but there's a lot of familiar elements. So that's not a criticism, but the thing with the user interface thingy, it takes like the consciousness of the Silurian. That's something that I know has been done. I think it would have been Let's Kill Hitler and Power of the Doctor, where people in the TARDIS, the interface takes the shape and consciousness of someone familiar. So that's a cool concept. It's not really needed, but yeah, we could see that Silurian again. I guess it gives another reason to have him in the plot. He's barely in it, so at least we get him for a bit more. Then we have this scene where suddenly the dinosaur comes and it's coming towards him, and the hut is falling down. The Doctor Joy sliding down, and there's a bit of a problem with the direction here, because as the dinosaur, its mouth is opening and they're sliding down, they suddenly stop with their feet, and it cuts to a shot from the side. And yes, they've stopped, but the dinosaur could easily just bite their heads off or get their feet or whatever. I don't know why it doesn't do anything, but it doesn't quite look right, that shot. It just makes it look very silly that somehow the dinosaur that's right next to them isn't going for them. Anyway, they get out of that situation, and then Joy is telling the Doctor how his thing is buzzing, and he doesn't deny it, which is make of that what you will. And yeah, they're slowly figuring out through the sonic screwdriver that there's going to be a big explosion. They don't have much time to get rid of it, because if they keep it on the Earth, that like seed thing is going to explode, kill everyone. And now I will come to a thing where I was kind of thinking, who actually has the case in the first place? This is where I get a little bit lost in the plot, because I'm trying to figure things out, and it's around this point in the story, about 45 minutes in, where you think, who had the case in the first place? Because the guy who walks into the hotel there at the start, he just acts really confused when he is no longer possessed by whatever's in the case. So I don't quite know who had the case. Was that guy evil? Is there someone working behind the scenes? Is this going to get covered later on? A few things that I'm not saying weren't covered, but I just didn't notice whether or not those are actually resolved. So then we get the Doctor and Joy. They go through like another door, and now they're in like some old, I don't even know, like cave, like dwelling place. It looks quite cool. And the Doctor realizes that he's got 4.5 minutes to stop the thing from exploding. So yeah, he gets to work. We've got a great variation of the 15th Doctor's theme. I think one of a couple actually in this episode, which is always good, because I have a channel where I do unreleased music, so any opportunity to try and get the 15th Doctor's theme, that's always good. That's a lot of views, so you might see that on my other channel. But yeah, he goes through the Orient Express. The CGI here, it looks pretty good. There's a couple of shots from further away of him where they look a little bit dodgy, but I'm not going to complain. Nothing that stood out as bad. These days the CGI is excellent, and we get him like he gets like a grappling hook or something, and he uses it to like pull a rock or something from the entrance to whatever tomb, or I don't even know what it is in that old place that Joy's waiting for him. But yeah, the thing falls off and he runs back, and meanwhile Joy, she crawls up the staircase, and it's taking us to this it's like a dark place we can see, but we don't know where it is. It's quite intriguing. We're thinking, where's the staircase taking us? The Doctor gets there, starts panicking. Joy's not here. He runs up and he sees her. And this is where we get to an interesting point in the story, because slowly we realise what's about to happen, that the Earth isn't going to explode, but everyone that was part of that suitcase thing with the handcuffs, they're all going to be part of this explosion, but it's going to turn into a star, because that's what the Doctor reveals earlier, that the explosion, it's an atom, it's going to come together, be exploding like a star. That's all cool. I don't know if it's meant to be like a Christmas star. We notice that Joy is beginning to... her chest is glowing, which is an interesting placement of the orangey energy, which it almost looks like she's regenerating, because she says to the Doctor when she's glowing orange, I'm not dying, I'm changing. So for a second it looks like a regeneration scene, which is a bit odd, but okay. Now, the close-up shots of her look quite good, but there's a couple of shots where you can see her whole body, and the CGI, the green screen doesn't quite look convincing. If you go and watch it, you'll see it looks a little bit weird. But yeah, then we have the scene with her. She's basically saying, "Yeah, Doctor, it's done for me. Say your goodbyes, and then I'll go off and be a star," which she's very happy about. I must admit, I don't think I'd be quite so happy if I was about to be a part of a star that was going to explode. So I respect her for that. Man, it adds a bit of character to her, because ultimately, I think by this point you kind of realize she really doesn't have much of a character. A lot of her, she's either possessed or she's asking the questions, right? So for Joy's character, you're just relying on a couple of moments at the start, a couple of those funny interactions with Anita and the fly, because again, who doesn't talk to flies when they see them in their hotel rooms? So yeah, as she's dying, the Doctor, he's very emotional here. I almost think here Ncuti Gatwa was almost too good at acting, because he is very emotive, and it shows that he's a great actor. But ultimately, I kind of think a lot of doctors, I almost don't think they'd be that physically emotional in that situation. I feel like you'd see the emotions a lot more beneath the surface. I think a lot of the classic doctors, perhaps, and that sort of thing, they'd have a look of admiration rather than Ncuti Gatwa kind of looking like he's going to cry, looking like he's bursting with happiness. So that's not a huge problem. It's different. It's different. But ultimately, I think a lot of the Doctors, why we love them so much, is because of how alien they feel. And you could say someone like the Fourth Doctor or the Seventh Doctor, they naturally just feel like an alien. And so they have less emotion, perhaps. And that's kind of what I personally prefer. But, if you want to have a Doctor who's emotional, they can still act alien. We have that with, Matt Smith. He's a very good example of that. He feels like a 900-year-old alien in like a 30-year-old's body. So that's really good. But I don't quite get that as much with Ncuti Gatwa. He kind of just feels less alien, more emotive. Which, again, that's not a problem with his acting, but doesn't really make him as good of a Doctor as others for me. Of course, we have the usual tear down the face, because you can't go a story without Ncuti Gatwa crying. That's fine. It's not as bad as other stories, so we'll skip past that. Then pretty much the Joy gets like turned into this orangey stuff, and it goes into the sky. We have the Christmas star now shining, and I can't quite remember which order the events happen in, but I think we cut to the World War II people. I think one of them is called Basil, maybe. And yeah, they're saying, "Oh, we've got hope now," or something. The World War II stuff. I'd like to think that's happening at the same time as Eccleston with the Empty Child and Rose and Captain Jack. I don't quite know if the times align. They're probably a couple of years apart in the war, but that's it'd be cool to think that was happening at the same time. We then have the people in Mount Everest and on the Orient Express and whatever. Who really cares about that? I think we then have the shot of Ruby seeing the star, and I don't quite know why she's in it, really. It feels like we're trying to... It never feels like we've ever moved on from characters with RTD, there's always someone returning, and she's back. Not even in the episode has passed without her, and already she's back after Empire of Death. I mean, it's nice seeing her, but I don't see the point. Maybe there'll be some relevance down the line. We will see. And then we go to the scene of Ruby's mother in the hospital. Now, it is a nice scene. I think, for me, it would have had more of an impact if it wasn't with COVID, because again, it kind of feels like, why are we going back to COVID? There's nothing we can do about that issue. There's no point having a subtle commentary criticising the handling of the crisis. But yeah, I think the scene doesn't quite have the impact that I wanted it to. I think if it was anything but COVID, and it was her saying goodbye to her mother in a different way, it perhaps would have been more emotional. But you can't help but watch it and just think this is just trying to have a dig at the UK government and whoever was in charge of handling things for COVID. Then I believe we cut back to the Doctor for the final scene. He says something about Joy. We see the star in the sky, and as he runs off, the words Bethlehem, and I think it's 0001, so the first year, go across the screen, and we realise, we're right at the start, really, for humans. So that is, well, not for humans, but you know what I mean. It's a kind of like a biblical thing that we're going into. That is nice. And then we go to the end titles. Doctor Who will return, and that's the end of the story. Now, before I go into what my overall thoughts are and what my number out of 10 will be, I did notice in the title, closing sequence, that Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday appears first. No Ncuti Gatwa, Doctor Who, or the Doctor first, but we have her name first on just one slide, and then it cuts to Ncuti Gatwa and the rest of the actors. I find that quite an odd choice. I'm sure it's probably happened once or twice before where the companion or someone's been shown the titles and the closing sequence first, but I don't really like that. I mean, think about it, even in Mission to the Unknown, which didn't even have the first Doctor, his name was still first in the credits. So I think you stick to having the Doctor first. I don't care what the excuse is. That's kind of how it is. He's the titular character. You gotta have him first, right? So the overall thoughts. I think this has got some very good ideas. We know Moffat is good with creativity, and the idea of a time hotel and going to all these different times is very good. I think there could have been a bit more, perhaps, relating to the future. We only see a couple of shots and sort of elements that would suggest this is from the future. It's a lot of going to the past. The timey-wimey elements, such as the bootstrap paradox and staying for like a year in that hotel, they feel a bit pointless to me. I don't really think they added to the story. I think they just kind of added to the length of the story, which is a problem, because if you want a quick, fast-paced adventure, lots of fun for Christmas, you can't be spending 10 minutes watching the Doctor and Anita in the hotel. You need action, and some Doctor Who's best Christmas specials have had action. And the Christmas Invasion, you've got so many great sequences, even the opening sequence of the TARDIS crashing to the Powell estate, or the fight with the Sycorax. There's so many good moments in that. Go to Runaway Bride, you've got the TARDIS on the motorway. Almost any Christmas special has a great sequence, even some of the weaker ones. I'd say The Doctor, the Wind and the Wardrobe is one of the weakest Christmas specials. You've got a fantastic opening and, some fun elements in there which feel very Christmassy. This did not feel very Christmassy. You could have done it at any other time and it would have had the same influence on the plot. I think when Christmas specials are at their best, it's when Christmas impacts the plot. It just needs to work. It needs to flow through it. You don't need to... If you're stopping and thinking, how was Christmas involved in it, that's a problem. So I think a bit better integration of Christmas into the story would have been very cool. But, there was some nice Christmassy music, and the visuals were nice. Obviously, this era that we're in with Doctor Who, it looks incredible visually. It's probably the best it's ever looked. So there's no complaints there. But ultimately, a story is what you're watching this for. Well, me personally, aside from monsters, but we don't really have monsters in this. And if there's not going to be action sequences, you're going to be criticising the story. And the story for me just doesn't have enough in it. It kind of feels a bit like a runaround, but not really a runaround, because at points it is there's not really much going on. Murray Gold's music, it was alright. It was quite loud in places. Nicola Coughlan was... I enjoyed her for what she did. She didn't get enough to do, but what she did very well. So no criticism there. And I think the acting overall was quite good. Ncuti Gatwa, he's a very good actor, but I just don't think his portrayal for me is necessarily what I want in the Doctor. But, to be completely fair, in this story, I thought it was good. A couple of moments where I don't quite think the portrayal suited what I think of the Doctor, maybe being a bit too emotive. That's been a common issue for a lot of people. But yeah, he's good. No complaints from me. I will go back to an issue that seems like a recurring one, especially in Christmas specials. It's that the Sonic is used way too much. Every time he opens the door, he uses the Sonic. It's used for that interface to talk to that guy that's on the mission for the Doctor. Really bad I can't remember his name. And some of the weaker Christmas specials again rely a lot on the Sonic. I know the Runaway Bride the Sonic's used about a dozen times there, so it's a recurring issue, but try and use the Sonic less. The ham and cheese toasty stuff was a bit too silly for me. I'm glad it didn't really take a big part of the story. It just seemed like a little gag, but yeah, if someone offers me a ham and cheese toasty and a pumpkin latte at a convention, I will tell them to... Kidding. But, not for me. The ending, nice. I was a little bit confused, but it was nice. And the effects in the story, I thought, were pretty good. There was a couple of shots, not too convincing. And I think that's an interesting point, actually, to talk about the direction, because it's solid direction, but there's a couple of shots that don't work for me. Like I said, the one with the dinosaur, it looks like it can really eat their legs off, but it doesn't, because plot armor. And I think perhaps could have been a bit more creative with, you've got a time hotel. There's so much potential there. Try and tap into it, showing different shots. Trying to be a bit more creative with like the entering into worlds. But look, it was competent and I enjoyed it. What Murray Gold and the script are trying to make us feel, I just think there's a lack of emotion we have for these characters. But maybe that's just me. But maybe I've just got a cold heart. Overall, I'm going to be giving this story... I'm going to be giving it a 5 out of 10. I would say the good pretty much weighs up with the bad. It doesn't feel iconic as other Christmas specials have. It kind of felt run of the mill. I was expecting more from Moffat because we know Moffat's potential, but it wasn't one of my favourite Christmas specials. Perhaps I'll do a ranking of Christmas specials, and you can see where this ranks compared to other Christmas specials for me. If you're interested, let me know down in the comments. Quickly, we're going to have a look at what other people think of the story. Now, the story aired a few hours ago. There's not really any way of really checking what heaps of people think other than the timescales. Often, I just have a quick look there, see what the average rating is, and it looks like it is 6.9 out of 10. So a lot of people are giving this an 8 and a 7. Yeah, I'd be in that 14% who give it a 5 out of 10. There's only been 14 votes, so really you probably need to wait for about 50 to 100 votes to have a proper rating to go off. So I wouldn't take this too seriously, this rating. So it seems like the community enjoyed it just a bit more than I did, with an average rating of about 7. I gave it a 5. Has the story left me excited for the new series? Not necessarily. I know that there's a trailer. I don't think it's left me particularly excited. It just felt like a run-of-the-mill story. There was nothing in it that left me going, I can't wait to see more. Ncuti Gatwa, he'll always be a fun actor to watch, but I just don't think he'll be an actor where I go into a story saying, ooh, I'm going to watch Ncuti Gatwa. And now very few Doctor Who actors are in episodes where you watch it for their performance. You could argue that if you're going to watch a story like Time Lash or the Twin Dilemma, you're going to watch it for Colin's performance because there's not too much else that really make them worth viewing. 5 out of 10 for me. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. What other videos do you want to see from me? This is only the start. It's going to be more. I'm very excited for this new YouTube journey, and I hope you can be with me for it. Bye.